My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and my job requires me to travel constantly. I work with real estate companies, handling contract renewals and building inspections. Because of this, hotels and motels feel like a second home to me. Most places I stay for a night, forget about them the next morning and move on. But what happened to me last year at that small motel in New Mexico? I will never forget that night. It was close to 8 p.m. and the road was nearly deserted. Rain poured down, and even my headlights barely lit the way. I had been driving for hours, and my eyelids were growing heavy. Finally, I spotted a small motel sign by the side of the road. The building looked old, but well maintained. All I wanted was to sleep for a few hours in a warm bed. I pulled into the parking lot near the entrance and quickly went inside. The moment I stepped into the lobby, I saw a middle-aged man with pale skin sitting behind the reception desk. He wasn't wearing a name tag or anything that identified him as a motel employee, but he had a faint smile on his face. "I need a single room," I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. Without even looking away from his computer screen, he replied in a monotonous voice, as if he had rehearsed the words 1,000 times. "Sure, room 102 is available." He handed me a small metal key, not a modern key card, an old-fashioned key. As I took it, I realized my hands were shaking slightly. A strange sense of unease settled over me, but I dismissed it as exhaustion. I took the key and headed to my room. When I opened the door, the room was exactly what I expected. An old double bed, a dim yellow lamp, an outdated television in the corner, a wooden desk, and a small closet. I changed into something more comfortable and sat on the bed. I placed my bag on the chair, trying to relax, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong, as if I wasn't alone. I forced myself to ignore it. "Emily, you're just tired. Stop overthinking." Grabbing the remote, I turned on the television. I randomly stopped on a news channel. The anchor's voice echoed in the background as I absently played with the edge of the blanket. And then I noticed something. On the right side of the television screen, there was a small round hole in the wall. I squinted, focusing on it. It was positioned at eye level, right in the middle of the wall. I got up and took a few steps closer. My heart started pounding. The hole was near the desk, just below the mirror. And someone had made it on purpose. I leaned in, bringing my eye close to the hole, but all I could see was darkness. I hesitated before running my fingers along the wall. That's when I realized the edges of the hole were worn down. This wasn't new. It had been there for a long time, and it had been used. The unease I had felt earlier turned into pure fear. Someone had been watching me. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone. I turned on a flashlight and aimed it at the hole. And then I saw proof of my worst fear. Behind the hole, there was a narrow, dark space, like a hidden passage inside the wall. And then something moved. My eyes widened. A shadow, just for a second. But it was there. Someone was watching me. My palms grew sweaty. I needed to call the police. With shaking hands, I dialed 911. As I put the phone to my ear, a voice came through the line. 911, what's your emergency? I was about to speak when I heard footsteps outside, and then the door handle jerked violently. Someone was trying to get in. "Open the door," a deep, firm voice demanded. My blood ran cold. It was the man from reception. At that moment, I understood. He was the one watching me. I jumped up and locked the door. Almost immediately, he started slamming his shoulder against it. "Are you calling the police? That's a mistake you'll regret," he shouted. My heart was pounding so hard, it hurt. I had to hide. The bathroom was my only option. I ran inside and locked the door behind me. Sliding down onto the floor, I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth, trying to steady my breathing. He was pounding on the bathroom door now. "You shouldn't have called them." Then, suddenly, the noise stopped. A few seconds of eerie silence. Then, a new sound from outside. "Police! Open the door." I was saved. The officers entered the room and helped me out of the bathroom. I was still shaken. The man was already gone. When they searched the room, they discovered a hidden passage inside the wall. Inside that passage, there were multiple holes, all facing my room. I felt sick. He hadn't just been watching me. He had watched other women before me. When the police checked the motel's records, they found out the man at the reception wasn't even an employee. The real staff member had gone missing days earlier. Who was he? How many women had he spied on? Had he ever harmed someone before? I didn't know. I'm Eric Turner, 34 years old. My girlfriend, Lisa, and I had been planning this trip for a long time. We were on our way to a coastal town for a short vacation. Most of the journey was behind us, but we needed a place to stay for the night. It was past midnight, and the road was almost empty. I had been driving for hours, and my eyelids were getting heavy. Lisa checked the map and said, "The nearest town is at least an hour away." Just then, I noticed an old sign by the road. It had faded yellow lights spelling out Motel. The place looked small and run down, but we didn't have many options. "Should we stay here?" I asked. Lisa hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but let's leave first thing in the morning." I parked the car and we walked into the motel lobby. It was eerily quiet. A young man sat behind the reception desk. He glanced at us briefly, then turned to his computer without saying a word. After a few seconds, he finally spoke. "Welcome. How long will you be staying?" "Just one night," I replied. He paused for a moment before handing me a key. "Room 104. Then, in a strangely monotonous voice, he added, "Hope you have a peaceful night." Something about the way he said it felt off, but I was too exhausted to dwell on it. Our room was small, but good enough for one night. I locked the door behind us. Lisa sat on the bed and looked out the window. "It's too quiet," she murmured. She was right. There was no sound from any of the other rooms. I turned on the TV to distract myself, but something felt off. Lisa didn't look comfortable either. "This place doesn't feel right," she said. I told her not to worry, but deep down, I felt the same way. I woke up in the middle of the night to Lisa's voice. "Eric, look at this," she whispered. She was pointing toward the TV, but she wasn't looking at the screen. She was staring at the wall above it. There was a small round hole, as if someone had drilled into the wall. A cold chill ran down my spine. I slowly got up and walked toward it. I couldn't see anything inside, but it was unsettling. Lisa whispered, "Do you think someone is watching us?" I wanted to tell her that was ridiculous, but deep inside, I felt uneasy. We started gathering our things when we suddenly heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped right outside our door. The door handle moved slightly. I held my breath, but the door didn't open. Then the footsteps slowly walked away. Lisa's eyes were wide with fear. "We need to call the police," she whispered. I pulled out my phone, but just as I started dialing, the footsteps outside grew faster. Someone was walking hurriedly down the hall, as if they had realized we were calling for help. Lisa gripped the door handle. "Eric, hurry!" I put the phone to my ear, but there was no signal. "We have to get out. Now." We rushed down the stairs, but when we reached the reception area, the same man was standing there. His face was emotionless. He looked up when he saw us. "Is there a problem?" he asked. His tone was too calm and too indifferent. Lisa opened her mouth to say something, but I gently squeezed her arm. "Number." "We're just leaving," I said. The man narrowed his eyes slightly. "You need to settle your bill." My hands were sweaty. I pulled out my wallet and handed him my card. He took it slowly, never breaking eye contact. Lisa stood frozen beside me. I could feel her tension. The man stared at the screen for a moment before handing my card back. But at that moment, a door behind the reception desk opened. Another man walked in, middle-aged, with sharp eyes and a stern expression. He frowned when he saw us. "What are they still doing here?" he asked the receptionist. The young man remained silent. Lisa gripped my hand tightly and whispered, "Eric, let's go." I snatched my card, turned around, and walked straight to the door. Just as we stepped outside, a deep voice called out from behind us, "Drive safe." I didn't look back. As soon as we got into the car, Lisa dialed 911. "Something is wrong with this motel. We think someone was watching us. Please send someone." The operator asked for the name of the motel. Lisa, her hand shaking, read it from the sign. There was a brief silence. Then the operator's voice came through. "That motel has had several missing persons reports over the past few years. Did they harm you?" Lisa and I exchanged glances. They hadn't hurt us. But what did they plan to do? That night, the police raided the motel. Behind the reception area, they found a hidden observation room. Do you remember the hole in the wall? It was one of many, and some guests had checked in but never checked out. Lisa and I clung to each other, shaken but safe. We never stayed at roadside motels again, and we never, ever looked back. My name is Jake Thompson. I'm an insurance adjuster, and my job requires me to travel constantly. Most of the hotels I stay in blur together. I forget them as soon as I check out. But Ridgewood Inn in Wyoming, that place was different. I will never forget the night I spent there. It was past midnight when I arrived in town. I checked my watch. 12:37 a.m. My eyes burned from exhaustion. My body felt heavy. All I needed was a place to sleep. Ridgewood Inn stood by the roadside, an old but well-maintained building. A dimly lit sign flickered above the entrance. It wasn't anything fancy, but at that hour, I didn't have many options. I walked into the lobby, where an old man sat behind the reception desk. He looked at me for a moment, as if assessing something. "Just one room," I said, my voice heavy with fatigue. The man hesitated briefly before reaching for a key behind him. "Only 306 is available," he said, handing it to me. As I took it, I hesitated for a split second. The key was strangely cold. I dismissed the thought. "You're just tired, Jake." I took the key and headed for the elevator. When I stepped into the room, nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, but something in the air felt off. It smelled of dust and old wood, but beneath that, there was something else, a faint, musty scent, as if the room hadn't been used in a long time. I placed my bag on the floor and changed into something comfortable. That's when I noticed something strange. The closet. It was an old wooden wardrobe, much larger than the other furniture, deeper than it should have been. I stepped closer. There was a faint stain on the surface, like something had once been hanging there for a long time before being removed. A weird sense of unease crept up my spine. I shook it off and lay down, too exhausted to care. Just as I closed my eyes, I heard a noise from the next room. At first, it sounded like quiet sobbing, but then it turned into whispers, low, strained whispers. No, please go. A cold chill ran through me. Was someone in trouble? Should I call for help? I hesitated before stepping into the hallway. The number on the next door read 308. After a moment, I knocked. Excuse me, are you all right? Silence. Then, after a few seconds, a trembling voice answered, You shouldn't be here. A shiver crawled up my spine. There was something in her tone. More than just a warning. It felt like a plea. Slowly, I stepped back into my room and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to process what had just happened, and that's when I heard it. A creak. I turned my head slowly. The closet door was slightly open. My heart pounded in my chest. I forced myself to approach the closet and yanked the door open. It was empty. But then I noticed something. The bottom panel was lower than usual, as if it had been added later. I crouched down and ran my hand over it. When I pressed lightly, click, the wood shifted slightly. It wasn't a real bottom. There was a hidden space beneath. A rush of fear washed over me. Was it just a storage compartment?